Good morning. Today is Friday, and we are going to be talking about preparing a CMA for a seller, and then we are going to be talking about appraisals and the difference between the two and also how they work together. And we have Jean from Ascension Appraisals with us this morning, who's going to help with this whole conversation. So going back to square one, oh, by the way, if you're looking for the PowerPoint or the PDF in Jostle in the library in training, this would be day 5, and it's called CMA versus appraisal. So we're going to go through the basics of putting a CMA together, and then I'm going to show you some examples of that. When you're preparing to list a home, even before you've gone to the home, you can be doing some work ahead of time yourself. One of the places that you want to go to, and we talked about this earlier this week, is into tools in Pinergy, and you want to look up the public records to see who is the owner, how long have they owned it, book and page, even what their how much they owe or whatever. So that it also tells you who the owners are, but that's a good premise to have before you start doing anything. If somebody gives me their address and I have an idea that it's a standard house, meaning not a customized house, the way I will do it before I use any program that we have is I will go into MLS myself and I will pull the comps. And there are two basic ways that I will do it to add validity to the programs that we use, and we'll have Jean comment on that when she gets into telling us the more thorough way that an appraiser looks at it. But the very first thing that I would do is go into the solds. And Jean, again, we'll go into this in much more detail, but I don't think the appraisers are going out and trying not to go out any more than 6 months, right? And if you can do it a shorter term,
right. The
you
lenders
will.
like us to stay within 90 days.
Right.
We know coming out of the winter market, that's really hard to do. So we do have to go back 6 months and sometimes a year, depending on what kind of property you're appraising.
And the other thing is, in a town, I always use Dunstable as an example. I know that in the very, very small towns, you might not have a lot of solds, and Jean can tell us later how she can make exceptions if she has to go to a neighboring town. But let's go back to a simple example. Let's say you were listing a split in Billerica or Chelmsford. If you went in and you looked at the solds first. This is the way I do it. I do two-part. First I do the solds, then I do the actives. And this is just for getting some of it in my mind. So I would pull the solds, and again, Jean will tell us in much more detail in a more thorough way the like style. So you're certainly not going to put a colonial if you're listing a split. And bedrooms and baths are important. Gross living area is important. The amount of land, all of those other things. But just get an idea of some ones that you think closely fit, and either print a short list of those or write the MLS numbers down or whatever. Then I go into the actives. And the reason that's the second step is by kind of proving out in your mind the solds, let's say it comes out at 380 is kind of a basic number. If you have that number in your head, then the next thing you're looking at is what is on the market in that price range. And it's a couple of things. You might look at how many splits there are in the market in that price range, or how many houses in general. I've gone in sometimes when there isn't anything on the market in that particular price range, which might sound unusual, but if it was, that might be a different consideration for the talk that you have with your seller. And in the opposite respect, if there were 20 things in a $50,000 price range, you might want to really more cautiously tell him, hey, you've got a lot of competition out there. Okay, so anyway, that's all a lot to think about. And I like to do that. You don't need to do those two steps, but I like to do my own preparation of understanding what's in MLS before we use any of the programs that we're using. So the first program to use is RPR. And John pointed out to me that you can get to RPR in Tools, which I don't think I ever knew. It's right here. But you can also get to it from your home page in MLS Pin. And if you go down on the right-hand side, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. There we go. If you go down here, RPR is right here. It's a super easy way to do a CMA. It's very thorough and it will give you an exact number. You do need to have your 9-digit National Association of Realtors number. You need to have paid your dues in order to have access to all of this. So I already did one this morning in preparation of doing this. All you need to do, going back to where we just were, all you need to do is put the address in, 123 Main Street, Chelmsford, Mass, and hit this, and a number will come up within 2 minutes. It's that quick, and it's an exact number versus the other program I'm going to show you. But then when that number comes up, you have all sorts of choices of different reports that you can put together. I usually like to use the seller's report. Let me see if I can go up here. See all the different, here's all the different reports. Whoops, create a report. This thing is very sensitive. There's a bunch of different reports that you can use, and actually you can delete pages that you don't want included in the report. Now, another thing you might want to do cautiously, and I'll say the opposite of that in a minute. If you want to look at that whole report before you send it to your client, because you can email it from here, you can just produce it, and in 2 minutes it comes out, and then you can take a look at it. If, on the other hand, you're kind of content with the number, and this is a past client, you sold his house 5 years ago, and this is January, and he's like, yeah, I'm thinking the middle of May I may list my house. You could send this to him as a precursor of what the market has done, and then you could also say to him, when it gets closer, we'll fine-tune the number. But this just gives him an idea of what's out there. So anyway, when you hit Run Report, and then a bell will ring 2 minutes later, out comes the seller report. Now, you're going to understand in a minute why I like doing my own research ahead of time. So again, this is the RPR report, which you can print, you can send to your clients, email to yourself, whatever you want to do. So it tells you, it gives you a map of where it's located, gives you the number. You can do, we talked about this a little bit before, you can do adjustments to it, which you'll be much better at than us. I just never have had that much confidence in me being good at that. There are also adjustments that you can do, and you can just arrow up or arrow down if you think that the outside of their house is spectacular because they've had it professionally landscaped, or just the opposite if it's not, or something else, or if it has the original kitchen and it's in poor shape, or whatever. You can make some adjustments on it. But it's a really thorough report. Have you seen these before?
I have not, actually.
RPR is great because it gives you all sorts of not defenses, but explanations that you can use when you're doing your listing presentation. List price versus sale price, days on the market, all sorts of stuff like that for them to consider before they put it on the market. Market health charts, median sales price versus sale volume, all sorts of stuff. And this goes on for quite a while. Then, eventually, after all of these nice charts, you get to the subject property, if we ever get there. This is kind of nice too, because your subject house is the orange. See where it says subject property? And then all of the houses around it are either current, pending, or sold. So that's really nice for them to see that the comps that you are using are part of their neighborhood. Or not if it's a tiny town like Dunstable is. keep using that example, but I've tried to do CMAs there. So comp selected, that's another thing. In this program, you can select or deselect things. Again, that's why having the background of what you've handpicked yourself, I think, helps you understand if it's a split. Does it have 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms? Is the downstairs finished? Does it have 1.5 baths or 2 baths or whatever? And we're going to talk about primary space and secondary consideration when I'm not. This is like, don't go beyond being an agent and become an attorney. We talked about that the other day. Don't go beyond an agent and try to be an appraiser. That's why we're doing the best we can with these simple programs. But part of our speech is going to be that we all have to respect and understand how the appraiser thinks about it and does their report. So anyway, to go on through this whole thing, all of the detail is there. It gives you a real nice comp of all the different things, and then it goes on to individually show each house and some detailing about each house as well. So the other program that we have in MLS PIN is Cloud CMA. Cloud CMA is a great program. It's a new program to MLS PIN. We had MLS PIN out here the last 2 months, and we have on our YouTube channel, LAER Training, we have videos of the classes we did for MLS PIN, so you can refer back to that if you want to, or call me anytime. But in the Cloud CMA, you have 2 choices. You have a CMA or you have a buyer tour. Here, I'll tell you a couple of the differences. I really like the format of this. It's crisp and clean. The only, not negative, but the only big difference of this is that it will give you a range of pricing. It will not give you an exact amount. And that doesn't make RPR a bad thing. As I was saying to John earlier, a lot of people, I see a lot of brokers just use exactly what comes out in RPR. And maybe they don't know any different, I don't know. But in Cloud CMA, it gives you a range. Again, you can pick and choose the pages that you want included in this, even what is a CMA, what is a market analysis. And you're going to explain to them, again, with the confidence that Jean is going to give us in understanding this today, how you even look yourself in MLS and what an appraiser is going to look at. Things that are a consideration in the value of your home: location, price, competition, condition, current market. Remember what I said? Yeah. So the last thing I look at is the actives, so that you can see how much competition is there, or is there any competition at all. Then your information. This is really great. Again, it's kind of a nicer format than RPR even, but all of the homes that have been included in this and where they are in relationship to the subject house. Here's a summary of the solds, the pendings, and the actives. Then what's really nice is anything that you have in MLS. Number 1, your listing pictures, but number 2, your paper clips. So any related documents such as floor plans will be included here. And I think that's a really nice feature. And maybe we'll see an example of that. I'm not sure, but it would be nice. Maybe not. You are allowed to have 30 pictures in MLS. And some of them do, and some of them are good, and some aren't. So everything is here. I'm trying to get to. Oh, maybe it only does it in the. So anyway, that's all here. I won't go into it right now, but just a point while we're doing Cloud CMA, I love the buyer tour. Have you used that ever? If you were going out with somebody on Saturday and showing, I should have mentioned this when we did buyer stuff the other day. If you were showing 4 houses on a Saturday, let's say you put them on MLS and they've been looking, you can take the 4 MLS numbers that they've given you, throw them into a CMA, a Cloud CMA Cloud Buyer Tour, and it'll set up a report like this. What's really cool is, number one, it maps it out, and you can make your map of traveling in a logical order. But the nicest thing that I like is, beyond it giving all of the pictures and the floor plans, it will give you neighborhood information.
Nice.
It'll talk about schools, it'll talk about restaurants. I recently had someone who ended up buying in Chelmsford, but they were in Reading, they were in Melrose, they didn't know where they wanted to live. So it was kind of a nice introduction to each of the towns that we were looking at. So again, that Cloud CMA program, which is free to you, well, through your MLS dues, is great for you to use. So that's that. Going back to the PDF for today, I can only tell you the way I've done it, and that we have these 2 programs available to us, because when you go, it's just as John said, and we will use this example in a minute. When you go to meet with the seller, they may already have a number in their mind. And where did they get that from? Did they get it from a Zillow's estimate, or just looking at what their neighbor's house sold for?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if there were houses that sold in the neighborhood, that's probably one of the best things to help you with. But you have to have your scripts ready. 2 places to have your scripts ready, 2 places to help you with confidence in your CMA and in your presentation is, 1, the How to Hire a Lion book, which there's a whole chapter on listing and how to better prepare your seller for listing a house, and even pre-inspections, getting your house ready and that kind of thing. So that's all in that book that you have. And the second thing is, in Jostle in the library, the very first thing that comes up is a thing called Words That Work. And it's 60 pages of scripts that Stacy has written for every situation that you might have. Words that work. So it's scripts for meeting with a seller, even doing price adjustments, or talking to somebody that's an expired listing, whatever. But if you're looking for ways to speak and things to say, that's another place to look for help with that. So remember that we're going to let Jean talk about maybe even the priority of which things are more important than other things, like style may be more important than how many bathrooms you have or whatever. But you have to consider all of these things when you're looking at a home. Going back for 1 second to the public record. When you look at the public record, see what it says. Remember that every town is different in their diligence and how often they've updated that. So I had a listing in Chelmsford years ago, and the house said 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. So when I go in to do a first meeting with a client, the first thing I say is, give me a tour, and then we'll sit down and talk. So I had the public records thing in my brain, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. So we do the tour, and I'm shaking my head, and we get back to the table, and I said to her, where's the second bathroom? She says, what are you talking about? I said, here it is, right in public record. All of a sudden, the light bulb went off in her head. Her husband had pulled a permit to put a second bathroom in, and then he got sick and passed away. So they never put the second bathroom in. And I know what you're thinking already. All this time, she had been paying taxes on the second bathroom. So I said to her, well, you can go up and speak to the town. She did, and she got an abatement.
Good for her.
Yeah. But those things happen. In the opposite respect, you may have owners who have done things on their own, and they've added this, that, and the other thing, and they never pulled permits. Buyer agents can go pull your folder in the town and see, do you have permits for this or that? It's really difficult if public records says 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. You have to say that if in fact there is that second bath. But when you enter the listing in MLS, it's going to ask you for the source of where you got the gross living area and the bedrooms and the baths. It's an easy cover for you to say public records, to put in exactly what they said. On this house on Charm Road that I just showed a minute ago, he had finished off 2 rooms on the basement and he thought they could be extra bedrooms. I said, they can't be. I said, aside from what an appraiser would consider, I wouldn't say 4 or 5 bedrooms because public record says 3. I said, we can say it's a playroom, we can say it's a home office, but I'm not listing it, I'm not portraying it for anything more than public record says, because that's the source of what we're putting in there.
You make me happy.
Jean could probably give you a lot of exceptions to that, but yeah, and that's why we're trying to get everyone that comes on board to understand how serious it is to not only know what you're portraying to the seller, to explain to him that you are there to really to protect him and to advise him of how to list his house appropriately, and then to also explain to him beyond the CMA that you're giving him is how in the process, when you go from offer to inspection to purchase and sale agreement, and then to between the purchase and sale agreement and the finance commitment comes the bank doing their underwriting work and sending an appraiser out. This, you have to explain that to a seller. We've talked all week about profiling your sellers. Is it somebody that's owned 10 homes already and understands the process? Or is it Martha and Henry who have owned their home for 50 years and they don't have a clue what real estate is like today in 2019? Or is it the millennial who's buying his first condo or home? So you have to adjust your scripts and your understanding of explaining all of that to them. So we're going to let Jean take over and add tremendously, I'm sure, to everything that I've said. But
Okay.
help us to have an understanding of how the appraisal is the most important thing in the transaction.
Well, let me first say that there's one of the biggest differences between a CMA and the appraisal is the differences in licensors. You guys are licensed as a sales agent. You guys have the code of ethics you need to follow, and the Realtor Act that you have to follow. The appraiser has to follow USPAP, which is, oh gosh, I forgot what they all stand for. You say it so often, right? But it's Uniform Professional Appraisal Practice. And those are the rules and regulations we have to follow. Like with the code of ethics, if you break them, you can't be a realtor. If you break the USPAP in a bad way, you lose your license. So we have silly little things that we have to put in the report. And not that this really makes any difference to our discussion here today, but this is just one little thing that we have to put in our report. If we don't put in a report, we could lose our license over this. For example, the subject property sold 2 years ago, and we didn't note it in the report that it closed within the last 3 years, and we don't note that, and our report gets reviewed, we can lose our license over that little mistake. So there's some weird things that we as appraisers have to put in our reports that you guys don't even have to even think about. But that's important for the lender to understand. You bought your house 2 years ago, and why is it worth $100,000 more today? The market didn't go up that much as a whole, right? So why is your house worth that much more? No, we'll tell you why. Because you gutted it. You bought it as a REO, and you gutted it. You put all this money into it and all this work into it. So now you brought it up to market standards where it's actually not a new home, but it's a very nice home. So that's why it went up. It's kind of like the FHA flip rule, 90 days, except for they extended to 30 to 36 months. So that's one little thing that we have to really consider before we even. But to back up with the CMA thing, the very first thing that we as appraisers have to do besides identifying the address of the property is we have to identify what the highest and best use is. And it's not what the assessor says. How many times have you done a property the assessor says is a 2-family? In reality, it's not.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Or does the house have an in-law apartment? Is that official with the town or not?
Or not, right. Just because the assessor has it noted, it doesn't mean it's legal. It doesn't mean, just the assessor and the building department are 2 different animals, or the planning board, depending on how each town is ran. So
yes.
before we can even appraise the property, we need to know what the highest and best legal use is. And that's the very first thing. Is it legally permissible? Is it financially feasible? Is it probable for the area? And what's going to bring the most return on your investment?
And by saying that, you're protecting the prospective buyer by doing that thorough research. I mean, that's really...
Yeah, it's the lender and the buyer. The lender brings the most money to the table. That's why they get to pick the appraiser. So, you know, if you know, Uncle Joe is buying a house and he wants me to appraise it, I can't appraise it because it's the lender. First of all, I can't appraise it because of ethic reasons. But second of all, because the lender brings the money to the table, so they get to pick it out. And so, lost my train of thought with all that. So anyway, we have the highest and best use is the most important thing. I have done properties where the assessor says it's a 2-family, and you walk in and you go, "Where's the second egress?" Oh, it's through the living room of the other apartment of the the main house. So you have to call the building department and say, "Hey, can you just tell me what the legal use for this property is?" You don't have to tell them anything about the property. You don't have to tell them the assessor says this or that, because we do research ahead of time, and especially for if I'm looking at MLS, but you know, everybody uses 123 Main Street, so I'm going to say 4 Pleasant Ave. So I'm doing an appraisal at 4 Pleasant Avenue, and I see that the basement's finished through MLS, but the property record card does not show that.
Of course.
So you're going, they just did it, and they haven't updated the property record cards, which they do that once a year. They did that January 1st. So any permits that were pulled after January 1st, they're not going to show on that card until. So you can always, the assessor's office should have it updated once the assessor clears that permit, because they clear it as well as the building department.
If they do it once a year.
They're supposed to, because it goes into their system. Every time there's a permit pulled, I worked in an assessor's office briefly in 2003.
So all towns in Massachusetts have to go by that? They have to update the assessment every year?
That's not the assessment, but that's when they update the records. They update them as they go,
so
as they close out the permit. But every year and that's how, when they do the assessment, they update it with anything that's been changed.
Yeah, I think some towns are better at doing assessments on a regular basis than other towns are. That's it. I know it's a different
You mean
story.
some towns do it more than once a year?
No. Some towns do it once every 3 years or once every 5 years.
When they go back out and revisit the property.
Yeah.
But if you pull a permit to put an addition on your home, that addition won't show on this year's property record card. If you pull the permit and you've just finished it, it won't show until the next year's property record card. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
So it's always important to call the building department and say, "Hey, do you have any? I don't say what property that I'm doing an appraisal on the property or I've been there. I'll just say I'm looking for. I actually do say I'm doing an appraisal. I'm doing an appraisal on this property. I'm just doing some research before I go, because it's not my job to report them. So it's not your job to report them."
And again, if you're listing the property, the buyer agent can also go in and pull the property card and find out if permits were pulled for this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we'll go back to that 2-family issue, because this is actually a true story. Property record card said it was a 2-family, and I'm like, "Oh, cool." I'm looking at the MLS photos. I'm going, "Well, where's the second egress?" You're looking at the outside. There's no way there's a second egress out there. There's one egress in. You can see it. So there's no common door to go, you know.
Wow.
So I called the building department. I said, "Can you tell me what the legal use of this is?" And he goes, "Well, the property record card shows." And I said, "Yeah, but there doesn't appear to be a second egress." As he looks further, he goes, "Oh, they applied for a 2-family back in like 2001, and they were denied." And I'm like, "Interesting." He goes, "So the legal use of that is a single family without the in-law."
Oh.
Ooh. Right?
Meanwhile, you're saying it's legal.
No, yeah, right.
The realtor is.
Right. Because they go by the property record card.
Let's follow that through for a moment.
Okay.
So 2001, the permit was asked for and denied. I'm thinking, remember we talked about the succession of owners. I'm thinking, what if it had changed hands between 2001 and now? So the present owner bought it and used it thinking it's a 2-family, and he doesn't even know that permit was denied in 2001 from the prior
I think
owner.
The first time it was tried to be sold, it probably wouldn't have went through that way.
You're right. The appraiser would have picked up on it.
Yeah, that's true.
It would have been picked up on. But there are cases. They're very inexperienced appraisers. It takes a long time to be an appraiser. I've been an appraiser since '93. My father-in-law was an appraiser. I used to type his reports. He would
Oh,
handwrite
yeah.
them, and then I would type them for him. And then,
So going back to, okay, let's say it was the contiguous family that got denied. When they put it on the market, see, by the time Jean gets involved, it's been listed, offers accepted, and now they're doing this work.
Right.
So the person that listed the house presumed that it was a two-family.
actually, the person that listed it as a single and a multi.
Oh!
Makes it even better.
This is a good
And the
story.
single one, she says, it's potential in-law, right? She uses the word potential. Her single listing was the right listing to do because that was the highest and best use. It's a single with a potential in-law.
But stop there, because we talked about fair housing on Tuesday,
Yeah.
and the word in-law was
Yeah.
in one of our cautious
Right.
words things. So was
Right.
it?
Or accessory unit or whatever,
Well-
second unit. I don't know what your
Well, I know Tewksbury calls it an accessory apartment. Every town
Every town
doesn't
is
do it.
different,
I
yeah.
know, but what you think she was pushing the buttons by saying potential
no,
in-law because
she did it the right way because there was 2 kitchens, 2 bathrooms, 1 egress out.
except that if they
and
were
then-
going to use it for that, they'd have to make that change of the egress.
Yes.
No, it's an
and-
in-law. The egress can go through the second unit. That's really what the difference is. If
Oh, well,
you know,
in-law.
Oh,
not
I
two-
see.
yeah,
Right,
not a-
I
right,
see.
in-law.
As an in-law, go ahead.
So as
Right.
the in-law, you have to have 1 egress directly out and then
Yeah.
Got
one
it.
through the other unit. That's
Got
what
it.
makes it an in-law
Okay.
versus
Oh,
the
okay.
2.
So
Right.
potential in-law was okay.
Yeah,
All right.
she listed it the right way. But
Okay.
when
The first time,
But
in
she
the first
also
one.
listed it as.
yeah, but she listed
two-family.
it both ways.
Yeah.
Oh, she listed it as a two-family, that's the mistake.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
thank
that's a mistake.
you. Okay, got
And
it.
the sellers did not tell her that their permit had been denied.
Well, the
Oh.
agent should have gone and checked. Because if you're going to do a CMA, you need to know what the highest and best legal use is.
Okay.
And the highest and best use is what the legal use is.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
So, there are situations where your legal use could be, I use my aunt's house as an example. She lived on 2A in Lunenburg, actually in Fitchburg. And it's commercial all around her. There's a residential home, which is hers, and then a commercial property, and then another residential home. Everything else is commercial.
Mm.
What is the highest and best use of that property? Well, she's grandfathered in to be residential because she's been there for 30 years. So they can't say, you can't live here anymore.
Right.
So she's grandfathered in.
But
But is that the highest and best use of her property? Well, if she's planning on refinancing, then probably yeah. But if you're listing it, you need to let the potential buyers know it's currently a single family home, the residents can stay, but the highest and best use probably is commercial because everything around it is
Oh,
commercial.
okay, yeah, zoning.
But anybody who goes to buy it has to petition the town, like if an attorney wanted to buy it or something like
Well,
that.
the zoning is already in place there now.
Oh, is it now?
Yeah, in my
Okay.
aunt's place, it's already in place because everything around it is commercial. But you're right, if the zoning was still residential,
Mm.
because like I said, everything's commercial. So
Wow.
at some point, the zoning changed. But if it is commercial, I mean, a residential, you do need to petition the town first.
Of
Mm.
course, yeah.
And you know, as a I don't want to step bounce it, but as an agent, you can't really say you can say you could petition the town, but you can't say they're going to approve it.
what if?
No, that's the stopping point. You can't say you would be approved, and I think you might be able to make suggestions, but just by saying that it's already zoned commercial, you're already ahead of the game with that one.
Right,
Anyway, go ahead,
right.
John.
What if you said it's zoned commercially, and it was an older house, and somebody bought the house, and they wanted to tear it down and put another single-family residential house in there? If they tore it down, would they have to now stay commercial?
Because it's grandfathered. Well, that's a tough question. That's a building department question
Yeah.
in reality. Because if it's destroyed for fire reasons, then they can rebuild to the same
Yeah, if somebody
foundation.
bought it and tore it down, wanted to put another house up.
Who would do that though?
Well, if it was an older house that was just grandfathered in, and it was just.
But if you have all commercial, everything all around you,
I know,
who's
I'm
going to
just
want to
kinda-
do that?
Right.
Highest and best use
He's a
is
builder.
commercial.
And the
devil's
thing,
advocate.
but the thing that I always say to clients
More
is,
value in that property.
you want to think about buying a place for your own enjoyment, but you also want to know the value of the place. So in a builder's mind, I would be cautious about building a single family house there, because any buyer that bought it would say, jeepers, what is my future value going to be if I'm surrounded by commercial?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, and who would want to buy it, you know? You know, especially if you got kids and the highway, I mean,
Right.
cars
Yeah.
zooming by you all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. So you got to find out what the highest and best use is. So this particular property would go back to my two-family, single family with an in-law.
Mm.
It ended up being appraised as a single family with an in-law, or with subject to the permits being approved for the permit for the in-law. I'm not sure if you guys have discussed in-laws and permitting and that kind of stuff. They actually have to now be recorded in the Registry of Deeds. That was new as of 2016.
Oh, interesting.
Your in-law, it has to be recorded in the Registry of Deeds as an approved in-law. And it doesn't necessarily transfer from ownership to ownership. You have to apply each time. At least in the city of Leominster you do. I remember that one because of this particular property. That's the only one I really had an issue with.
You applied with the town
Yep,
first.
yeah, you have to go before the zoning
Wow.
board and you have the variance to have the in-law.
What
Will
if
the zoning allow that?
What if you buy it as an in-law because it was used as an in-law, then the town says, no, you can't use it, then what happens to the buyer?
We could
Well,
probably still use it.
as the,
They just can't.
As the assessor said to me, well, we're not the police of telling you how many people can live in your house.
Right.
And somebody can certainly live there. There's no law saying you can, I mean, well, everybody can thank Ernie Bach Jr. for allowing you to have extra kitchens in your house. He's got 3 kitchens in his house on the vineyard. And they tried to zone him or nail him for 3 families. Like, I have 3 kitchens in my house. I have kids, I have this, and if it's 12 o'clock at night, my kid wants to scramble eggs or whatever, I'm not going downstairs. He won. So now you can have as many kitchens at your house as you want.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Not everybody's aware of that. Not all lenders are aware of that. Not all underwriters are aware of that. But now it sets precedence, at least for Massachusetts.
Can have
As many kitchens as you want. Ernie Bach Jr., thank you very much. Made my life so much easier now.
That is interesting.
Right? And I just found out about that about 3 years ago. Anyway, after conversation with the assessor and the building department, the whole process was that they need to go to the building department, pull a permit for the application for that, go before the planning board, and then once they're approved, and usually if you have an in-law, they typically continue to approve that from owner to owner. But you can't promise your buyer that either. You can say that it's currently used as this is what I know. In the appraisal world, we just make it subject to that. And the lenders don't have a problem with that. You don't have to get that permit beforehand because it's a process. You have to go before the planning board, and then after that you actually have to file it with the Registry of Deeds, and then you're legal. at
So
that point.
again, you know, what we're saying is ask the questions, know your scripts, talk to your seller, you know, what is going on, and don't misrepresent the house because you could get in trouble.
Absolutely. Same thing on the appraiser end. I actually did a house where there was permits. We'll talk about the permits you talked about. They had this beautiful space finished over this massive garage. It must have been like 30 by 36 garage. It was one of those big like commercial garages in a residential area. It's a little ranch in the front, and then it went up this big massive thing, and it was a whole in-law setup. It was all connected. Not one permit was pulled. These people bought the house, and I was going to refi on it, and pulled the property record card, and it shows nothing of that space finished, and they bought this way. So the appraiser who did the job beforehand didn't do their job. So the appraisers are only good as they're trained. And I started to say it takes a long time to become an appraiser. And I would take an appraiser who's a licensed appraiser who's been doing it for 25 years versus a certified appraiser who got their license a year ago. I would have that licensed appraiser do my job because they have more experience. And a lot of people get licensed and they go on their own. They think they know what they're doing, and they don't. It's kind of like black belt. I'm a first degree black belt. I know nothing. Those 5th degrees, they can kick my butt all day and night, you know? And so you just get the tip of the iceberg at that point, you know?
Yeah.
Like you have
I
your sales
understand.
license, you have enough to get here. She's going to bring you the rest of the way, you know? So, but the appraisers are only as good as they've been trained. So that's why these errors happen along the way. So somebody's going to get in trouble somewhere, and you hope it doesn't fall back on you somehow. I hope it never falls back on me because I'm
Be
sure I've made
careful.
mistakes in the past. You know, when I first went on my own, I went on my own in 2005, and I had a lender send me a letter say, we had a review done on your report, we found this, this, and this. And I'm looked at one, they only really found one thing, because I explained these other two things, like, oh, okay. And this one thing I'm going, I had no idea I couldn't do that. I had no idea. So I explained myself, did my case. They wanted me to take a USPAP class, and I was good. So, and that was in 2005, after I've been doing this since 93.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's so much to remember.
But I didn't have the guidance of my supervised appraiser, any longer either. And they would review my reports, for all those years I worked for him before he would send them out. They review them, and they look for, any errors I would have made. Usually it's grammar.
Yeah.
Or maybe I had said that it was legal, and it actually was, and I just checked off the wrong box, but I had the right terminology written. Because we can't just check off a box and say it's legal. Legal, meets the lot size and that kind of stuff. We actually have to write it too, because that's part of that USPAP thing. You get in trouble for not writing things. That I already checked off here that it's legal. Why do I have to tell you it's legal? So
let's go back to the beginning and
So highest and best use. That's the very first thing you need to do in order to determine how to go forth.
which I don't think would have been in our radars necessarily.
That's the most important thing. You got to know what the highest best use is, because if you think you're praising a two-family or comping a two-family, you're really comping a single with an in-law, or it's a single. It makes a big difference in
Probably
value.
the most of them that we look at are all single family, so that's why we probably don't think of it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so in most cases you don't have to worry about it, but when you have an in-law, check it out.
Yeah.
Very good.
If you have a two-family that looks a little funky, check it out. Or if you have a three-family that looks a little funky, check it out, because it may be only zoned for two. I could tell you stories about highest and best use for 4 hours, and I don't want to waste your
All
time.
right, so
on that.
beyond highest,
So-
let's do the other things in your
my
order
order?
of importance.
Okay.
It's like style and bedrooms and baths and gross living area and all of that jazz. So
All right, so when you think about comparable, it's really the art of substitution. We're substituting something one for the other. If I can't have that house across the street because somebody already beat me to it, what else am I going to look at? I'm looking for a Cape that has 3 bedrooms, and I want 2.5 baths. So I can go with 2, and I'd like to have a 2-car garage. So you're looking for your exact match pair. So I'm going to look for all the Capes. And then from actually look at all the Capes, then I'm going to narrow it down into my search, because if you have 50 Capes, you don't want to go through 50 Capes. So now I'm going to look at my living area. How much living area do I have? Fannie Mae guidelines, which is what the lenders use when they review our reports, do we meet the guidelines? And they have some incredibly stupid guidelines. Like you have to bracket everything. So if I have a 3-bedroom Cape, I can't use all Capes that have 4 bedrooms for my comps, and I can't use Capes that all have 2 bedrooms. So I need to have something that at least has 3, or one that's higher and lower. So we bracket. So if you don't have the exact number, let's say I'm doing a 3-bedroom home, and I don't have any 3-bedroom, which is unusual. So I have to use, and I only have 2 4s, and now I got a 1 or a 2. So that brackets me. Otherwise, they say that there's no market for this product.
Okay.
Same thing if you have a 2-car garage and all your comparables don't have it, or vice versa. You don't have it and all your comparables do. Then saying your house is not functional because there's no garage and everything else does have one. So you have to bracket things. You can't make all your adjustments up, but you can't make them all down.
Right.
So like bathrooms, if you only have an 8-room, 4-room colonial with 1 bathroom built in the early 1900s, it's very common. But all the other ones have been renovated and they all have 2 bathrooms now, so is yours functional? So you gotta find one that has that 1 bathroom.
and what do you do for half bath, 3/4, and full? How do you
No such thing as a 3/4 bath anymore.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a shower. How many people use a tub?
No,
Only
not
people
like
with
that.
little kids.
Exactly.
So that's considered a full bath now?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's been considered full bath for a long, long time.
Really?
Because really, what's the difference in reality? Most people take
Right.
a shower.
Take
I
their
get
shower
it, yeah,
bath,
I get
yeah.
it, but I just
Yeah.
I never knew the terms
Yeah.
would change.
Well, they actually changed our reporting forms back in, I don't even know, it was like 12 or 10 or something like that, where we report our bathrooms as 1 point something or 2 point something or 3 point. So the first number is how many full baths, and then the point is your separation, and the next one could be 1 or 2 or 3. So that means the half baths. It's 1 half bath and there's 2 half baths.
Okay.
So there is no such thing as 3/4 bath in their life. We can't even put it in our report. It comes back as an error. So it's full bath.
Very good.
And the majority of people don't take a tubby any longer anyway,
I have a
unless you have those big bubbly tubs.
Yeah, I have an odd question. What about in an older home where you have a bedroom that is only accessed by going through another bedroom?
You hope you find something else like that. The older homes were built that way, so as
It's true.
And this is where experience comes in. You have a new appraiser go, nope, you can't include that as a bedroom. You just can't include it as a bedroom. They have this tunnel vision because it has to have its own privacy. You can't have walk-through, you know what I mean? But the house was built that way back then. That was code back then. It met the criteria. You're not going to compare a house that was built in the early 1900s to a house that was built in the 70s or the 80s, typically. So you won't have that kind of functional issue. But bottom line, when I come across that, how many bedrooms does the town call it? I
Yes.
get down to that.
Yes.
I get down to that. There's some appraisers who will disagree with me on that,
Yeah.
but it's really lack of, what's the market say? Because if you have 3 or 4 of these houses that are recently sold, people still live in them,
Right.
and they're selling, so it means the market is accepting them. And
Okay,
in most
so
cases, that bedroom won't be used as a bedroom anyway.
that's probably true. So the second part of that question is, what about having heat in each bedroom?
You have to have heat. Well, FHA says you have to have heat.
FHA says you have to have heat.
You have to have heat. Conventional, I think you have to have heat as well. Otherwise, it's not considered living space because you have to have heat for living space.
That's an issue with the older homes because a lot of them had just the hole in the floor
Yeah.
that let the heat rise upstairs, and they didn't have heat in the bedrooms.
Right. I'm not coming across that too much anymore because a lot of those older
We
homes
just had
have
one in
been.
Billerica.
You know,
That's
window in a closet,
Window in a closet doesn't matter.
doesn't matter.
No, you have to have to make a bedroom. You have to have a window,
Yeah.
a privacy door, and it has to be 7 by 7, no less than 7 by 10.
Also, a closet has nothing to do with anything?
And you have to have a closet. Yeah.
That's what I said, that's what I was asking.
I thought you said a closet with a window.
No.
Oh,
closet
Closet
and a window.
Oh, okay. I thought you said a
Ah.
closet with a window. I'm
That's what I
like,
heard too.
I never heard of that.
you don't have a closet
My
with a
granddaughter
window?
has that. She has a closet with a window.
So a closet and a window.
Yeah.
And what's the size regularly?
70 square feet. I mean, it can't be, 4 feet by whatever.
It can't be closet size.
Right.
Right.
It can't just be a long closet
Yeah.
either, with a window and a door.
You can put a mattress in
know.
there.
This way.
So the like style, I mean, we have a place in MLS for putting style.
Mhm.
It gets goofy when you could go from, let me just get it all out. So you could have a slab ranch and a regular ranch with a basement. Obviously, you're going to look at those two a little differently. But then you have a split, which not technically, but kind of in theory is a ranch with a finished basement.
Yeah.
Then you go from Cape to Gambrel to 2-story, whatever 2-story is. So, there's all in between. So, I mean, you try to stick as closely to the exact style as you can.
Well, when we talk about colonials, whether you have a hip roof
Yep.
or a straight front colonial versus one with a little bump out in the
Yep.
the beginning and the front there. I don't know, my computer won't go back on. I had some pictures I was going to show. I'm actually teaching the appraisal portion of a real estate class, and I had to do all these slides and stuff for it, so I actually have a lot of that.
Do you want to plug in so we can cast you?
Sure. Yeah, you can do
Can
that.
she just plug into this?
Swap spots for a second, or will it reach?
Yeah,
over?
we can do. I don't know if it'll reach. It
Oh
will
yeah,
reach.
it'll reach. My plug's on this side anyway, so
Oops.
no, we're good. Ignore my picture at the bottom there. It's not the best picture of me. I don't want to play the whole thing though. I just want to see the current slide. I don't know if it's gonna.
Do we have to cast her?
She's not going to be able to. So I'm assuming she can just turn it and show it.
Oh.
Okay.
Are you showing the? Okay.
I just want the speaker to go on. Don't want it to go on. There we go. In case it.
All right, guys. If you could look.
So here's different styles of. It's taking its sweet time here.
Is that supposed to be popping up there?
Oh, I don't know why it's like that. Why are we doing that? Just want to show that. want to work. Maybe I should close it down and open up again. Oh, yeah, I don't know if you can see these well enough.
No,
Actually,
this is good.
can move that over. Should be able to move that over. Well, anyway, these are different styles of colonials. They're all
Good.
colonials, okay?
Right, gambrels.
So we have the
Yes.
gambrel, we have the
Yes.
garrison,
Yeah,
we have the
yeah.
old style colonial. Some people call them
Saltbox, would you
conventionals.
consider saltbox as well? Yeah.
So you're saying as long as it has 2 stories?
And you don't want to break it down so much. I mean, you really want to have the exact same house. So if you have a house that's built like this, these are all built in like the 1990s and forward, right?
Right.
So those are all the 90s and forward. So they'll all be similar.
Right.
But there still is some straight fronts still being built.
Yeah.
And this is more of a contemporary.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah. So
But
you-
it's still into the colonial family.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
And this is the garrison,
Mhm.
you know. I mean, I'm sorry, the gambrel. So they're all colonials, and this was just basically to talk about different styles of home. You know, you have to take this, hour class and stretch it into
French
2 hours
provincial,
sometimes.
even, you can put the French provincial in there too as well, because of 2 levels, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But you really, you
Yeah.
if you're looking at a house in the 90s or even to current today, you're going to look at something like this
Yeah.
for a colonial, typically.
Right.
And back in the 80s, you're still very straight front or the
Correct.
hip roof.
Yep.
So you don't have to stick the age of your home, we'd like to stick with like 10, 15 years. It's not always possible. If I'm appraising a house back in the 50s, you're still going to see a house like this in the 50s. You'll see it back in the early 19s, 1900s. But once a house is over 25 years old, it's an old house. So you don't have to worry too much about age after it's 25 years old. It's usually younger than that that I was always taught to worry about.
Okay.
So if I'm appraising a house that's built in 2002, I'm not going to use a house that's built in 1970. I'm going to try to stick to maybe 1990 forward.
Right.
But you really try to try to do an apple for an apple. So we'll go back to your splits you were talking about before. You have the if I'm going to appraise a split, I'm going to use just splits. And I'm in Dunstable and I can't find splits, I'm going to go next to a ranch because it's overall similar. You still have to go in that split, you got to go up or down, right? You got to go one way or the other.
Right.
So, but you still have one level of living, main living. Then you have the finished level in the basement for most cases for a split. So that's the time I would interchange those two. So we don't always interchange them, but you try to do a split for a split.
Right.
And if you can't find the split because you're in a rural community, then you should, well, what's next that's closest here? I won't use a split for a cape.
Right.
Even if I'm doing those split capes, where you have the foundation,
Yes,
and then you
yeah.
have that split cape.
Yeah, I had one of
It's
those.
still, you still go into the basement, then you have 2 levels above
Right,
that.
right.
I've seen split colonials too.
So what do you call them?
Colonial cape,
Okay, cool, all right.
you don't have to call them a split, whatever,
Good to know.
because you still have those 2 levels above. You have that cape
Right.
or that colonial. And you can compare them one to another. They're not going to appeal to each other, to the typical buyer. Some buyers might not care. They just want to be on this street because grandma lives across the street, or they want to be in this neighborhood because they want to go to that school.
Right.
So they may not care the slight difference in the styles. You might see a price difference, and that's when you make that change. These 2 houses are, they're the split capes. They sold for $425, and these 2 are just regular capes, and they sold for $450. So you're saying, oh, there's probably about 5% difference there between those 2 homes. And then you can, so because it's just the regular cape, I'm going to just make it 25 higher or 5% higher,
Gotcha.
something like that. Does that make sense?
It does.
So
Okay.
talk about the split with the valuation of the finished area on the lower level.
Okay. All right. Actually, just a couple other pictures I'd like to show you that are splits.
go ahead.
And I'm trying to figure out why this is not doing its thing. There we go. Because I talked about splits and multi-level homes and that kind of stuff. I can actually bring this-
Multi-level is where you have like a half set of stairs.
right
You
here.
have 3 different levels.
These
you
are
know,
multi-level.
Yeah, tri-level.
So you walk in
Tri-level,
there,
right.
Yeah,
and this is your main level right
Yeah.
here. That's your main level. Under the main level is basement.
right.
Okay, so then when you walk in, so when you walk in the front door, you got the living room here, typically in the kitchen here, and then here you have stairways to go up. And there's
Right.
usually a bathroom and a couple of bedrooms up there. They're all set up the same. You know that the bathroom's typically going to be on the left because it's in the back of the house. 2 bedrooms in the front and 1 in the back. You just, but you can also go down, like the split. And that's where you get to this level right here.
Right.
And that's on slab typically. But the basement's usually under
With the
here.
walk-in on the back.
Yes, absolutely. You know what we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes there's
I
not,
had one
right?
of those.
Right.
Depending on how where the
Yeah.
topography is. So that's a tri-level home or
Yeah,
a multi-level home.
Yeah, try that.
Um,
Right.
So some towns will include that in their living area, some will not. If it's all above
Really?
earth, I include it. Because you have your basement level here.
Correct.
That's all above earth, so I will include that.
Yes.
Which I'm going to confuse you with that when we talk about what are true raised ranches, because they're not. People say ranches, splits and raised ranches are the same thing, and technically they're not. And I'll explain why in a minute.
Yeah, good.
So we have the multi-level.
Mm-hmm.
And then over here, whoops, we have your typical split.
Mm-hmm.
Just a typical split. You walk in, you go one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
We have this split here, same thing, still split. It's just a little nicer, it's a little more contemporary flair to it. And then we have a split here, the hip roof split. It's kind of
Right.
cute. These two houses, what do they look like to you?
Oh, I had one of those in Chelmsford. That's so confusing because you walk in the door and you're like in the house.
And you're in the basement.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are true raised ranches.
Okay.
Because up here is these are bedrooms and your living rooms here, and their kitchens in the back, and the bathrooms are over here. So you can't say that's a colonial because you have a reverse floor plan.
Yes. Yeah.
Your living area is on the second floor. Your
That's
kitchen's on the second floor.
That's
So try to
nice.
keep that in your head.
So
If the
that's-
kitchen's on the second floor, this is basement.
Wow.
That's the rule of thumb. Even though they're all above earth, we can't really include them in the living area, even if it's finished. You can. I think MLS needs to have a couple other buttons here. They need one that says overall finished area,
Yeah.
and then above grade finished area. That would make everybody's life so easy.
Well,
Yeah,
see,
what-
going back to the public record,
Oh,
you have
depends
all
on
the-
what town.
I know, but it. You know,
Some towns include the basement. Shrewsbury does that. They include the finished basement.
and you
Even if
wonder
it's
why
a
brokers
colonial,
are
it's all
confused.
underground. They still include it in the living area. It's crazy.
Right.
Okay, now I'm more confused than I was before.
So, I happen to know that this house has finished rooms right here,
Yes.
and that's a garage. I actually showed this picture to a real estate friend, and she goes, "Oh, it looks like an extended colonial." I'm like, "What's an extended colonial? I've never heard that term before." She goes, "Well, because the garage is there, and then there's rooms above it, and it looks like a straight front." I'm like,
Since
"Okay."
the lower left is finished, that's where the foundation is, correct?
Yes,
they
so
probably
it's slab.
carpeted?
It's slab.
So there's
It's
no
like-
basement under that.
Oh, there's no basement?
No basement underneath that,
Okay,
so that's all slab.
Would that be considered an area that we would use as living area?
No,
Well,
you would
no.
give that as a finished lower level or finished basement.
You would just say it's
Yeah,
finished lower level,
because
but
your
you would not
kitchen's on the
include it
second
in
floor. How many houses you're really going to find like that?
Yeah.
The appraiser's not going to find any. If
just
they're
went- I just
lucky,
went-
they might find one in the
I
last
went through
36
one like on
months.
the right.
So they get value for that finished basement level, just in a different portion of the report.
Mm-hmm.
That's important to remember. So if you market your properties that way, then everybody's on the same page. When I'm looking for, say, the split, when I'm looking to do a CMA on the split or my appraisal on the split, and I have 50 to choose from, I'm not looking at each 50 of them to see how much living area there really is. I'm gonna sort my data by how much living area is there. Fannie Mae likes us to stay within what they say a reasonable difference. Well, what's reasonable? The lenders say 20 to 25%. So I will go 25% higher and 25% lower than what the public record says, or what my floor plan says, because we have to measure the house ourselves. We measure the exterior.
I was just going to ask you that. So many of us, and it is a service that we provide in our company, we are having professional floor plans done.
Yeah.
And I usually bring them to the appraiser when I go.
Yeah.
I mean, the appraisers have been thankful for that.
It's nice to have the floor plan, absolutely, but we still have to measure the exterior because that's where we get our
Exterior,
living area
yeah.
from the exterior.
Yeah.
Because you measure the inside walls, you know how thick a foundation is, right? And how thick the walls are. You're losing what, 6 to 8 inches
Right.
on each end. So you can't just go, well, so it's 21 this way, so I'm going to make it 23.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to be exact because everything's based on that number.
Mm-hmm.
If
And
our-
especially splits. They go from a
Exactly.
regular to a 70-foot one, and
right,
there's a lot of
exactly.
different
Exactly.
styles.
Oops, I'm running low. Anyway, so
So when you consider the validity of gross living area or not, how do you I am presuming then that you don't go by anything that the agent has put in MLS.
not always. And
Because
it makes it really hard for us to. We could miss a sale that happened on the next street over, and it's the exact same house, but they I don't like to use the word embellish, but that's the only word that comes
Yeah.
to my mind. They're trying to make it as marketable and appealing as possible, and I understand your job. I understand it, and I don't want your job. That's why I only do about 4 sales in 20 years.
Well, there's two
So-
ways to do it, and again, sourcing it from the public records thing. You can put, let's take a split. You can put 1,200 square feet, and then you can say plus an additional 500 feet on the lower level.
Right, that's the right way
Or-
to do it.
Or you could put 1,900 square feet or whatever it is. This includes, you can write it either way, but does that mess you up if
It
they?
messes you up too. It messes you up too, because if you're gonna do a search by living area,
Yes.
Yeah.
you're gonna, if your house is 1,200 square feet, and in reality that same split you're talking about that has 1,900 square
Yes.
feet is really 12, you're not gonna look at that one because it says 1,900 square feet.
That's
It's
right.
way too big.
Right.
So that's the reason
There isn't
why.
there isn't you're allowed to do it either way, so you
Right.
probably have 50% of the agents doing it each way.
Right. So when it's a split, I kind of throw away that rule sometimes. If I have 50 to look for, then I'm just going to narrow my search really in. Okay, what's right here?
Mm-hmm.
Now you really want to try to stay in your neighborhood, but if you can't, then you expand your neighborhood. So every we'll use a subdivision for example. You may have a subdivision up here that's just as appealing as a subdivision up here, and you may have a subdivision up here that's not as appealing as these two, right?
Mm.
So you're looking for an apple in each of those subdivisions. So you don't necessarily have, if you can't stay in your neighborhood, that's when you expand. And you don't ever leave your neighborhood because you're trying to bring a value up. you just don't do that. Because the appraiser's going to stay here. Because this is,
That's
I have
true.
14 sales
That's
in
true.
here,
That's true.
and the highest sale is 425, and the house is selling for 475.
Mhm.
But there's a house over here that's sold for 475, and
I got you.
you know,
Yeah.
but maybe that subdivision is just a little bit more appealing than this one. So you don't go out of your neighborhood just to bring in your value.
So back to the split and
Yeah.
the difference in the 1,200 plus the 500. Is your valuation for that finished space on the lower level secondary to the primary space that's on the main level?
Explain, ask that again, sorry.
Well, I think we've been taught that when an appraiser looks at a split, that finished family room and office on the lower level are considered secondarily by an appraiser versus the main living space that's on the main floor.
They get value for it. We have to break it out.
But it's not the same
It could
value.
be equal value.
It could
It
be.
could be. And I can't say it is across the board.
Okay.
It depends on a lot of things. How's it finished? Is it finished as nicely as the rest of the home?
Or was it some guy's weekend project that was just slapped together? That's
Right.
interesting.
What if there's a walkout? Would that give it more value?
No.
If there's a walkout to the backyard?
No, not
That
necessarily.
wouldn't.
No, not everybody wants that because it could be a matter of security for their kids.
Right.
It's another door they have to lock at
Or
night.
escape for the teenager.
Exactly. The kid's booking it out the basement door.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
so not necessarily this, you know.
Gotcha,
And
gotcha.
in reality, beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Correct.
People will pay extra for something that you're going, you're out of your mind, buddy.
Mm.
My son, he'd be paying extra for that jet tub. I had one, never used it. He used it every week. I never used it. I'm like, the biggest waste of my money ever, you know? But he would pay extra for that. And I'm thinking, all right, buddy.
It is different, yeah. What about the size of the lot?
It depends. And it's not a blanket answer for that either. If you have a lot size that's 5,000 square feet versus one that's 1,500 square feet, and they're both on non-conforming lots, you can't do anything to either one of those lots. You can't add anything to it. Typically, that's 10,000 square feet. You would make an adjustment, but you can't add anything to it. So if you have two houses that are exactly the same, and this one sold for 2,000 less, even though the lot was 10,000 square feet bigger, can I justify that adjustment? Not necessarily.
Mm.
But if I have one that's on a half acre lot and then one that's an acre and a quarter, and everything else is the same, you can see there's a difference in the thing, then you make that adjustment. Usually it's after the 10,000 square feet, and it depends where you're at. If you're in Boston, it's a big deal. If you're in Dunstable and you have 3 acres and the
Oh,
neighbor has 4,
that's true.
that's not a big deal.
That's true.
It depends. So there's not a blanket answer for
Location.
that.
Location.
Yeah. There's not a blanket answer for anything you can ask me.
But cul-de-sac versus Main Street USA.
Yeah, you have the cul-de-sac versus the main road. There's an adjustment for that. You have everybody's zooming by you have privacy.
Mm.
Not everybody likes that cul-de-sac, so I'm not going to say there's an adjustment from a cul-de-sac to a side street. But
Now-
there is from a main road to a side street and a cul-de-sac.
So I'm going to ask you about condition. Every day of the week, I don't really mean that, but appraisers will call me and ask me about a house that I sold and say, what was this like? Because when they're, well, maybe you see pictures in MLS, but sometimes you may have a house that had one picture. And,
Yep.
and you know, the real estate agent was lazy or something. So they're doing their appraisal and they would like to have more information from the listing agent. And some of the things you might ask if you call a real estate agent would be,
If there's not enough pictures, hey, can you tell me about the kitchen? If the kitchen's not in your photos, that tells us it's an old kitchen. It's dated.
Right.
And you know, you're hiding something for your potential buyer anyway. The more pictures you have, the better for the appraiser. The more pictures you have, the better for the potential buyer too. But as the appraiser, I will call and say, hey, why is there a $10,000 closing cost adjustment here, or closing costs, when the property's selling for $100,000? Oh, well, that's really not just the closing costs. They had a repair that had to be on the roof, and they decided to wrap it in there, and they called it closing costs. So it tells me the roof isn't good.
bingo.
You know?
Yep.
But usually we'll call them like, hey, I can see that you have the report on your MLS listing says you have 8 rooms and 3 bedrooms and 2.5 baths, and the public record says there's only 3 bedrooms and 1.5 baths. Oh, that 3rd bedroom or 4th bedroom's in the basement. Okay, because they don't fill it out well. Sometimes you can't tell what all the bedrooms are. They don't fill out what floor each room's on.
So where the 1, 2, and 3 is, or B, when you're filling out your MLS
Yeah.
form, sometimes people just leave that blank. So
Yeah, you have no idea what's where, and I think it's important for me as the appraiser, especially if you got finished basement, and the property record card. All of a sudden, it's a ding, ding, ding to me because property record card says there's 1.5 bathrooms, and there's MLS is just 2.5. So it tells me there's probably not a permit for that 2nd bathroom.
do you look at things like, I had a house in Carlisle recently where the guy wrote a piece of paper that said every single year that he had installed things. Or people in the written description will say, new furnace and hot water heater installed in 2016. I mean, are you glad to see things
Yes.
like that because that
Yes.
helps you?
Yes, it helps the appraiser a lot.
Yeah.
You have to have a roof, you have to have windows, you have to have doors, you have to have a heating system, you have to have appliances. And appliances are considered personal property unless they're built in. But we don't make an adjustment because you have a Wolf refrigerator or Wolf stove versus the GE whatever. Not everybody's going to use that big stove. The Wolves are very expensive, and the GE is just your average stove, right? Not everybody's going to appreciate that. It's there, so what? Okay. If you're in a higher end home, you expect to see that. So that's why you don't make adjustments for appliances. Plus, the refrigerator is personal property. Most cases, the stove is personal property because it's not affixed. The dishwasher is not because it's hooked up. It's attached to your countertop. Your microwave, it's built-in. But we don't give adjustments for new appliances. That's something that's nice to the buyer. Okay, good. I got nice new appliances. But my son had really nice new appliances and he didn't like them. He went out and bought all new black ones because he didn't like the shiny little stainless steel ones.
Yeah,
So
correct.
beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Correct.
John, what was the question you had before? What was the story you were telling about?
Oh, it was, I'm building a little small subdivision in Medford.
Okay.
It's 3 lots, and one of the we haven't got foundations in yet, so I have a neighbor down the street contacted me, is interested in moving out of his house and buy one of the houses we're gonna build. Well, he's gonna give me the sale of his house, and he already had numbers figured on his head where he could, he's got money saved up, and then with the sale of his house, that money would go towards his down payment on. Well, he was telling me he had somebody trying to sell his house 2 years ago, and it fell through. He just wasn't getting what he thought he should get. Well, now he wants to get $630,000 for it. Well, I did a CMA on it, explained to him through the process of it, and I explained to him that he's going to get appraised. Basically, they're going to use similar comps that I'm doing for you. And it was really worth like maybe $570, I think, at the most.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to explain that. He's like, well, I don't know if I can afford to buy it. I said, well, I need to know that because we're making all these upgrades on our house for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if that money, say I sell it for $550, are you going to be able to buy a house? He said, my house is worth. I want you to list it for $600.
You're gonna waste your time.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Some of these owners, some of them just think the houses are worth
I hear
$2
you.
million, you know, it's like,
When I do a refi, we can't discuss value with anybody.
Yeah.
If I'm doing an appraisal for you and the property's not gonna come in, as a courtesy call, I will call you and say, hey, I just wanna know what you use for a CMA.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a little bit hard time reaching the price. And I can't tell her if I'm off by $5,000 or $50,000.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I just can't discuss value. But I can talk with her about what did she use to obtain her list
Numbers.
price in the first
Yeah.
place.
But trust
Sometimes.
me, when the phone call comes, you're already scared. Go ahead.
I leave the agent with no news is good news, but I'm going to send you an email about your market activity.
Yeah.
So, but if I call you, then I have a problem.
Mm.
And that's just courtesy. We don't have to do that. But we're all in the same business together, and it's good juju if we work together. You know, and my job is not to bring in the value. My job is to give the bank the most probable purchase price. I like to confirm it, but if the value's not there, I can't, and I always feel bad about that.
so what happens if I
But,
I list this house for him?
so let me tell you the answer here. At least this is what I do. When I have a refi, and the lender, and the borrower will always say to me on the way out the door, "So what do you think it's worth?" My answer to them is, "Well, I don't even know." The first thing I do is I look at your property, and then I compare it to other things that have sold this similar
Yeah.
to yours. I have an idea in my head already, but I just can't discuss it with them.
Right.
So then I'll say to them, he goes, well, they'll say, well, if I was to sell it today, I'd sell it for $600,000. Then I say to them, well, what would you buy it for? It makes them stop and pause.
Ooh.
Because they know everything about their house, everything that's wrong with it. They
Yeah.
know they have that little drip that nobody can see.
Yeah.
They know they have, whatever. So it's always two different numbers in their head. Your friend has an idea what he would buy his house for. But it's his house, so it's worth more than everybody else's
Yeah,
house
exactly.
already.
Yeah.
But my sister-in-law, I have her house listed. Like I said, I really don't do sales. Ironically, I have 2 going on right now, and I haven't had any in years. But she wanted to list her house, and it's a dumpy little 2-family in Fitchburg. And she wanted to list it for $150, and I'm going, it's not even going to sell for more than $120. It's been on the market since October.
Yeah.
For $150, she refuses to reduce the price.
Well, that's told them.
That's what's gonna happen.
You know, I've
It's
already
gonna
told them.
sit
I said, I'd
there.
like to list it for $549 and just get a lot more people in there and.
The only way you would get around it is if you got a cash offer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they
then
bring
he
money
said, well, I
to
got a double lot too. I was like, Mario. Well, then Mario. I said, your lot size is nice, that you're a little bit bigger than everybody else, but your house is the main ingredient here that we're dealing with. You know,
Right.
it's like,
Right. Yeah.
I pulled all comps in his neighborhood. Like West Medford is in a whole nother,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And because he was talking about referring to houses over in West Medford, you can't compare your house to over there, Mario, over next to Winchester and all. You
Right.
just can't do
It's
that.
location. This is the neighborhood, and that's where you have to stay.
And, well, I would go back and use Jean and say, we just had a class on appraisals, and this is a serious thing. Do you want to, and say to him, do you want to get an accepted offer on your house and then have to worry for the next 3 weeks until the appraisal answer comes back? And then what happens?
What happens is too, because now he's saying he wants me to list it anyways. All right, we agreed on whatever. So I'm gonna list it kind of more my way and hope for the best.
Yeah.
But what if our house that we're building probably is not going to be ready till October? No, we haven't got foundations in yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him you can either list it now and sell it and then find a place to rent, or you can wait, but now it's all contingent on your house selling. If you wait and then my house is done, I got the OC, I need my money. I need to sell this because otherwise I'll list it. You know, so he wants to do it now.
So he wants to list now, but not sell until October.
Well, that was one of the things. Well, why can't I? So, well, most people that buy now, Mario, probably aren't going to want to wait 4 or 5 months to be able to move into your house because you're waiting
This is a
for
lot for the sellers to think about. Well, where would I go? What am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So they're looking for a place to rent right now, but it's kind of like a
You got a tough one going on.
I don't know what to say to them really. It's a decision you got to make, Mario. I'll list it for you now. It's a good time to put on the market right now. You know, but if we wait through the summer and you want to list it in August, it might not be I don't know where the market's going to be. You know.
Right, and it's still even when this is a great time to list for everybody.
Yeah.
And we all know
Yeah.
what's coming. The little bidding wars are going to be coming.
Right.
You got to be careful in those bidding wars because you still have to praise out.
Right.
They
That's
still
what
have to
That's
appraise
what I
out.
told them. I
Yeah.
said, they're gonna be coming in, Mara, if your house.
Yep.
it's gonna
I
be-
had a condo in Leominster just this last like 3 weeks ago, if that long ago. The highest, this is subdivision, or actually not subdivision, but this complex that was built as apartments like in 2005, and now they're all condoized.
Mhm.
And they're selling them one by one. So the highest sale was $290, and my subject property was listed for $298. I don't know why. This one that sold for $290 had sold the month before. It's the exact same thing, and these condos are all about the same. A little bit square footage are different, and either all the basement's finished or part of the basement's finished. But these were exact. The subject was, I don't even know the square footage, but the square footage was like 20 feet bigger than the one they had sold. And the sale had a slightly larger finished basement area, like 5 feet or something. Exact house.
Mhm.
Why is this one worth, or $298?
Yeah.
It's just not. You can talk about scarcity, supply and demand, what's there. Well, it's worth that much because, well, I don't have any sales to support that.
Right.
And I don't have data that says and what makes it even better is a guy had just bought it in October
Oh,
for
jeez.
$285. Well, why do you think it's worth $298? The market didn't go up that high. It did go up about 9% from last spring until I think it was like October, but it hasn't gone up since then. So if you can see that there's that adjustment, that time adjustment,
Yeah.
then you can say, oh yeah, it's worth that. But if you don't have the data for the time adjustment,
No.
you can't give it. So that's where this whole scarcity and supply and demand thing goes out the window. We don't have the data half the time to support these adjustments
Yeah.
of people buying emotional. And that's the biggest thing between a BPO or a CMA versus an appraisal. I don't have any emotional tie.
Correct.
My commission is not, or my pay, it's not a commission. It's just a flat fee. Nothing like the commissions are. And I know what commissions are. I'm waiting for a $12,000 commission myself right now. So, if I sold that house for $300,000, I wouldn't be getting 12, So, so you guys have an emotional stake in it. The seller has an emotional stake. That's why it's worth so much more. Then the buyer has one because my daughter lives across the street and she's about to have a baby, and I want to live across the street from my grandkids. People buy emotionally, they sell emotionally. You guys are caught up in their stories and their drama and your paycheck. And a good agent doesn't focus so much on that paycheck. And I'm sure that's not everybody, we do our own business for what? To make money, right? But we all have to be reputable and we all have to care about what we're doing.
Right.
Correct.
I have an agent who works for me. He's an appraiser and he's also an agent. And this just talks about agents, he has an offer on the table for a house that's selling like for $490. The house across the street, exact same house, came on the market for $20,000 left. They pulled their offer. They put the offer in on this house. He didn't care his commission's going to be a little bit lower. Exact same house.
Yeah.
He got a better deal for his seller, for his buyer.
And code of
That's what
ethics, that's the way it should be.
Right, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Our job as real estate realtors is to work for our client, right?
Right.
And you're not working for the client if you're worried so much about your paycheck. So we're not emotionally tied to any of this stuff.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about the square footage,
Mhm.
and it's a bit of a dilemma because if you're listing the property, a split entry, and you're going to say it has 1,200 square feet, but there's 500 square feet on the basement, and the person is looking, the buyers are looking at these listings. Wouldn't they look for the largest square footage of property? I mean, do you follow what I'm saying?
Yes, that's where your dilemma is, and that's
That's
why
the-
we need to have another
That's
field
why I'm saying
in
that.
MLS.
Well, what would be
Overall
the
finished
ethical?
area.
What would be the ethical way to produce it on the
You,
thing?
because the
In the
MLS
listing.
says
MLS allows you to do it both ways, as long as
Okay.
you truly disclose how
Okay.
you did it.
I think that's really cool.
It's
but now I
hard
know how I
for
would do it.
it's hard for the appraiser
I would do it.
because you can I would put 1,200 square feet, and then there's a disclosure right underneath it. It says plus additional 500 in the basement, and then
Oh.
your source is public records. But you can do it the opposite way. You
Yeah.
can put 1,900 or whatever
Yeah.
it is, and
And
then
then-
still put in the disclosure 500 of that is in the finished basement. What
Yeah.
Gina's saying is she feels that skews it because that isn't the main living area. I like doing it the other way. I like doing 1,200 and then say plus there's an additional 5.
if
'Cause you-
somebody's looking at, no, sorry, not to interrupt.
That's
you,
all right.
Go ahead.
If somebody's looking at a split,
Mm-hmm.
their agent should be smart enough to realize that these numbers are not right.
That's right.
if I'm looking at a split entry home and this one says it's 2,200 square feet, and you're looking at it, there's no way that house is 2,200 square feet because you know it's
Right.
40 by 26. There's no
Right,
way.
Right,
So your agent, as an agent, you're going to say, I'm not even going to worry about GLA because I know they're looking for a split.
just take them
And,
and show
and
it.
it's going to be in the basement area anyway.
Yeah.
But it's really harder when they do it with a colonial or a ranch,
Oh,
you know, any of these other homes where you, with a split, you just kind of throw that rule out because you know it's a split is a split, and they're all about the same size, and there
Correct.
are larger foundations.
correct. Right.
So, but however your broker advises you is what you should do.
That's a good answer. The other thing is when you're putting a client in for search criteria, they could say, I need to have 1,500 or
Ex-
more.
yeah.
So by the way the agent has put it in, again, could skew that because you might miss out on a.
That's
So
my
that's-
point.
Because
I
there's a
know.
difference
That's
between
my
like
point.
livable area versus
Yeah,
the
yeah,
actual.
yeah.
Right, and
What
that's
you
why
can
they
go
need
in.
that additional field. It would really take away all of this anguish from everybody.
It's
Yeah.
kind of,
You have your overall livable area or finished area.
Yep.
You have your above grade finished area.
yep, yep.
And that makes everybody happy. Who do we know in MLS we can get this done with? You know? Seriously, maybe I shall just write letters.
I try. How are we doing for time? Oh, we're pretty much done. Gina,
Okay.
was there anything important that we forgot?
I just want to be able to answer any questions you guys have, and I think the most
Be
important
careful.
thing is
One last question I wanted to ask was about when you get the call, when you're a listing agent and you get the call from the appraiser to meet them at the house, I always say, do you have a copy of the P&S yet? And I have found it's 50-50. Sometimes they do or don't. Now, how does that happen that you do or don't?
it depends on the lender.
Does it? Okay.
Yep, yep. With FHA, we have to have at least the offer. An offer is an acceptable. Massachusetts, you probably know this, is one of the only few states that have two
Right.
systems. So the offer is a binding contract, so we
Okay.
can use the offer. We like the purchase and sale because things could change after the home inspection. You know?
So my
That's for
take
sure.
as an agent is to always be respectful to the appraiser. And I always ask, when they call for the appointment, you definitely try to fit them in when they want to be there and all that jazz. But I always say, do you have the P&S yet? And if not, actually, lots of times I will get their email right there and email it to them ahead of time. And then I bring anything else that might be helpful. I know some agents will bring the comps and things like that. I don't really bother doing that because I figure they know how to do that. But if I have the professional floor plans, or if I have that beautifully written document that my person in Carlisle did saying every single year that everything was built,
Yeah.
anything like that that I might have to help the appraiser's job, I will bring that.
There's nothing wrong with providing the appraiser with what you think is comparable.
Why do they need the P&S? I don't understand.
That's
why
the
they-
contract price. So we can't send our report in without it because there's a spot right there that says contract. Have you reviewed the contract? Yes or no. If you haven't reviewed it, they don't want the report.
The appraiser has to have that.
Okay, they don't send that to you automatically.
So, and
Most
so I'm saying
lenders do.
sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That's why I always ask if they already
Okay,
have it.
I'm not surprised by that, okay.
So the
Thought the
seller's
bank would have
agent
that.
is usually the one that meets the appraiser.
Yes.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, not the.
Do yourself a
Because you wanna
favor.
make sure that.
Yes, you
Oh,
want to
yeah.
make sure it goes through.
If you're doing an FHA particularly,
Yeah.
meet the appraiser there. If it's on lockbox, still meet them there because if there is a list of repairs that need to be done,
Yeah.
you'd want to know ahead of time.
Mm.
You don't want to wait for that appraisal. You may think that they're all taken care of, and they may have missed something, or you may have missed something.
Mhm.
And the last thing you want to do, and I'm just going to say this right now, if you meet me there, I'm going to walk through it. I'm going to tell you everything that's wrong with that spot. If you don't meet me there, you're waiting for the appraisal.
Right.
Ooh,
You know, and
Kind of courtesy.
well, you know why? Because I've tried this in the past, and try to send them an email of everything that's wrong, and you can't always
Yeah,
tell them
basically-
exactly where something's wrong.
Basically, you make my job easier, I'll make your job easier.
Well, no, because it's just too difficult to say, well, on that corner of the roof over there,
Yeah,
you know,
Right.
Right.
it's just too difficult.
that makes it easier.
Meet the appraiser there, and most appraisers will say, if you can send me a picture of the work done and I can see that it's done, we don't have to wait for the final inspection if it can be done before the appraisal's sent in. Because if the front door needs
I've had that
painted,
happen.
the front door needs painted, I can see it's that front door. I don't have to go back out. I can see that the picture is
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
You know, I can see that it's
Yep.
done.
Right.
Yeah, the
So-
appraiser has said, take a picture and send it to me. Yeah.
Yeah, if it can be done before the report's due in. Then if it's after the report's due in, then they send you back out for a final. But there is nothing wrong when you Do you want to provide the appraiser with your CMA? Because it helps the appraiser understand where you listed it from.
Interesting.
Some appraisers will say, oh, I can't take that information. They think that they can't take anything you've given them
Yep.
because it's going to skew their opinion. Well, their job is to verify the facts and the data. So, but if you're doing a house that's particularly tricky,
Yes.
you want to provide them with what you use to provide your CMA.
Why not, right?
It helps,
That's a good
it helps
thought.
the
I never
appraiser
did that.
understand where you listed it, how you came up to your price.
Oh, okay.
You know, that's important.
You're only adding help to the job that the appraiser is doing, so why not, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants it to work.
Yeah. Then you probably won't get that phone call. Hey, Bobby Joe, I'm a little shy here. How did you come up with this list price? You know? And again, like I said, the appraiser can't discuss value with you, but it's a courtesy. Because in most cases, the lender's going to say, well, did you reach out to the agent?
Yes.
And did you reach out to the agent and see how they came up with their list price in the first place?
Right.
Yeah.
So now I just do it as a you know, two ways of courtesy. And I know I'm going to be asked
That's a great
anyway.
idea.
So if you have any issues
Okay.
with potential ones, you think you might have a potential issue, then it doesn't hurt to provide the appraiser with something.
So as we wrap up today, thank you very much to Jean for coming and setting us straight and giving us a great understanding of appraisals. And as she said, whatever information you can give to the appraisers, your CMA especially, so that they know where your comps came from. That's a great tip for everybody to remember. And floor plans, LAER3D.com, get your floor plans done. So have a great weekend. On Monday, we are going to have Charlene here telling us all about dot loop and how to use the loops for your listings and for your offers so that we understand what forms are required, what forms are secondary, and how to fill the details out completely when you're first setting up a loop.